The latest development in the pursuit of peace in the Russia-Ukraine conflict could potentially escalate tensions even further. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz have vehemently rejected a rare ceasefire proposal and its terms highlighted by Russian President Vladimir Putin.
You know better than me that Russia has unilaterally annexed 4 Ukrainian regions after many months that Russia is not controlling those regions in their entirety. Therefore, if President Putin's proposal is, we are willing to have a peace negotiation if Ukraine recognizes the invasion of Ukraine and gives up the occupied parts, doesn't seem particularly effective to me as a proposal, the one of telling Ukraine to withdraw from Ukraine. I read it like this, and it seems to me more a propaganda initiative.
The terms, announced ahead of a 2-day summit in Switzerland, have been labeled as propaganda by Meloni and a dictatorial peace by Scholz.
What Putin is ultimately proposing is to put his imperialistic raid into documents. What we need is not a dictated peace, but a fair, just peace that focuses on the integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, which is why the peace conference now taking place in Switzerland is an important first step. The major issues are not yet being decided there, but the foundations are being laid for progress to be made on the major issues, perhaps at a further conference.
Putin's ceasefire proposal, unveiled on Friday, suggested that Ukraine must withdraw its troops from 4 regions that Russia claims to have annexed. This was in addition to a demand that Ukraine must stay away from NATO membership. Western leaders have dismissed this as an unacceptable ultimatum.
Ukrainian troops must completely withdraw from the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia regions. Moreover, I draw your attention, they must withdraw from the entire territory of these regions, within their administrative borders that existed at the time of their entry into Ukraine. As soon as Kiev declares that they are ready for such a decision, and begin a real withdrawal of troops from these regions, and also officially notify about the abandonment of plans to join NATO, we will immediately, literally at the same minute, order to cease fire and start negotiations.
Meloni criticized the proposal, stating it effectively demands Ukraine to withdraw from Ukraine. Scholz echoed this sentiment, dismissing the terms as tyrannical. The summit, hosted in Bergenstock, Switzerland, has attracted over 90 countries and global institutions, marking the largest gathering for Ukraine since the onset of the conflict. Notably, Russia and its key ally China were absent from the event, leading to tempered expectations for significant progress. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has presented the summit as a success, emphasizing the broad international support for Ukraine.
Ukraine never wanted this war. It's a criminal and absolutely unprovoked aggression of Russia, and the only one who wanted it was Putin. But in any case, the world is stronger. That is why the peace formula was born, the formula of unity of the world majority for the sake of peace, for the sake of the full effectiveness of the principles and purposes of the UN Charter, international law, and thus global security. This is something that is close to every nation in the world. That is why we have managed to bring together 101, for now, countries and international organizations. For today, such number of participants registered here in Switzerland for the first inaugural peace summit.
Zelensky asserted the importance of diplomacy and collective efforts to halt the war. Andriy Yermak, Zelensky's chief of staff, reiterated Ukraine's non-negotiable stance on its independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak accused Putin of perpetuating a false narrative about his willingness to negotiate. He also criticized countries aiding Russia with weapons supplies, asserting they are on the wrong side of history.
We come here united because we choose peace. peace based on the foundational principles of the United Nations Charter. The Ukrainian people did not ask for this fight, but in defending their country, their valor and their sacrifice have been truly humbling to witness. It is a cruel paradox that the things that make life worth living are also the things for which brave men and women are prepared to die.
European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen condemned the idea of freezing the conflict with foreign troops occupying Ukrainian land, warning it could lead to future wars of aggression. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida also called for a fair and permanent peace in Ukraine during an international gathering in Switzerland.
We've gathered here under one shared hope, which is to bring peace to Ukraine as soon as possible. And it must be a fair and permanent peace based on the UN Charter and international law, and attempts to change the status quo by force or coercion should not be justified.
A draft declaration from the summit reaffirms Ukraine's territorial integrity and rejects any nuclear threat against the country. The declaration also highlights the importance of safe transit for commercial shipping in the Black and Azov Seas for global food security and calls for a prisoner of war exchange. In a significant financial move, G7 leaders have agreed to use interest from frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine. The $325 billion in assets frozen by G7 countries and the EU since the invasion's onset generates approximately $3 billion annually in interest. This interest will be used to service a $50 billion loan for Ukraine, expected to bolster its war effort and economy by the year's end. As the much-touted Swiss summit progresses towards an end without any tangible outcome for the warring nations, the international community continues to grapple with the complex dynamics of the Ukraine conflict. While the absence of close allies Russia and China limits immediate breakthroughs, the reaffirmed global support for Ukraine's sovereignty sends a clear message to Moscow.